Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my video, and today we'll be doing another build video. As you can see here, I've got everything laid out, and now this is the ZMR210R parts kit that FPV Model sent in to review, and I'll leave a link down below to a more detailed, in-depth video I did on all the specific parts in here. But just real quick, we've got the frame and all the hardware. Got this little assembly bag with heat shrink and such. Got some stickers, DYS XS30 amp ESCs, 200 milliwatt Dragonfly VTX, X-Racer V3.1, Maytech PDB, Runcam Swift, Emax, the new RS205S motors, and just some tools and odds and ends in here that they threw in. So yeah, let's get into this. This will be part one in the build. Okay, so here we are. Since the frame is just a single bottom plate, we don't have to do any assembly here. So we're going to be taking our motors, and these new Emax motors are all clockwise threaded for the nylock nut here, so it doesn't matter where you put them, but you still do have to observe the correct rotation. So basically, we're just going to be wiring up these DYS ESCs, these XS30. You can just wire all the wires straight and then change it in the BL Heli Suite configurator. However, some people have reported desync issues with these XS30, so I like to do them manual wiring. So basically, instead of just wiring straight across for the three, you just say switch any of the two wires and just switch them like that, any two, and they will spin the opposite direction. So let's just wire up two of them straight and then two of them with a flipped wire. So for these, I'm going to want to, in the kit here, they include this little wire sleeving mesh stuff, and I normally don't use it, but they include it, so I thought I might as well give it a shot. In this one I've used it a couple times before. So for this, I'm going to just kind of roughly eyeball it. Let me pick in on the camera a little bit here. For the motors, I'm just going to sit about here. For the ESCs, there's nothing really sticking out, so I can kind of bring them. I want to have these wires longer so you can see the wire mesh better. So these will just kind of fit in about here. You want to keep them back far enough to keep the PDB out of the way. The wires, because that's going to sit right about there. So our wires are going to come about there. So I'm going to make the motor wires about this long, just kind of roughly eyeballing it here. Just make sure they're all straight. And right there. So let's try that. Okay, so now we have our motor wires cut here. I just actually decided not to use this wire sheath just because these wires are so short. There's not that much room on the arms. You won't really be able to notice it, so I'll just leave it out for this build. And it'll make it easier, especially if you're a beginner builder, or you know, it's going to be quicker for the video. And please, none of you cry for me stripping wires with scissors. Alright, so I got the wires all stripped here, and then just give them a twist on the end to make sure you don't have any loose ends or burrs. And I just prop them up on the ESC just to get them up in the air. We'll get our solder here. Make sure you have a nice large tip, as you can see here, hopefully nice large tip, and use some pretty good heat on these connections. I'll try and keep my hands out of the way for this. And I'm just going to thoroughly tin these. Make sure you don't breathe in the fumes as little as possible. Make sure you get the wires pretty hot so the solder flows well through all of that. There. And now let's just tin these pads. Some as well on the ESC here. There, I want a little bit more on this one. And there. So now for this one, it's really simple. Let me get in the middle of the frame here. Since this is just going to be the straight wiring ones, you literally just wire it up like that. And you can use pliers or tweezers or something to help hold it down. It's a little bit tricky once you get more on, so you get the connections there because the other wires are fighting you. But if you get creative with a couple different fingers, you can get them down there. Sorry if it's not in shot. Like that. So you can get pretty good connections there. No cold joints. Just inspect everything. Make sure the wires are sitting as far down against the pad as possible. This one might be up just a little. And also be very careful to make sure you don't bridge anything here. So that wire, that motor is pretty much done. I'm going to add just some heat shrink along the end. I think I'm going to actually keep these clear, so I'll get some clear heat shrink that comes in the kit right here. These came with the ESCs. I'm not actually sure if they fit though. Should have cut it, but I just wanted to see if it would fit. Alright, that'll fit. So I'll take it back off and cut it to length because I just want to cover up these connections. A lot of people leave them bare, but I don't really like that because what if, I don't know, you drop a screwdriver on it while it's on, then you short out the pads. Who knows? It's also a little bit of weatherproofing. Air heat shrink is included in the ESCs. I'm just gonna slide it halfway over the wires, halfway over the ESC there, and I'm gonna get my heat gun. Let me turn the heat on this guy down. Just using 150 degrees. Not very hot, but this stuff is very thin. In my experience, yeah, you can see it just shrinks down real nice here. Alright, here we go. That's our very first motor done. You can see nice, well and protected, and fitting it on the frame. You can see it will have plenty of clearance for the wires to go around the standoff to the PDB here. So now make another one exactly like this, and then we'll move on to the next ones where we're going to flip wires. Alright, so we now have our two straight wired motors done. So now for this one, I'm just going to do the exact same thing we did before, except once again, just cross any two wires. They usually just do the outside and the middle one. It does not matter. You can do outside, outside, middle, whatever combination you want. It does not matter. Just cross two of them so they are not straight anymore. And for cutting these wires, I just find one of the easy ways to get the same length, just roughly, is just take another piece of wire you've already cut off, just line that up real quick, and boom, right there. Now you have roughly the same length of wire for your other motors, and I find I don't care if they're the exact same. You can't really notice it when it's on here. So let's pull in more, and let's strip these wires. I probably am going to I'll leave them the same length. I'll be able to bend them. You can cut them a little bit of a different length per strand or per wire, because of the crossing. One of them needs to be a little bit longer than the other, but it doesn't really matter usually. So once again, let's tin this. Alright, now do the ESC. Okay, there we go. Let's tighten in just a little bit more. Get these tools out of here. And we're just going to take, I like to do just outside the middle one, it does not matter, and basically just do that. Now we just do the exact same, just solder them up, make sure they're touching nice and well down to the pad, not just suspending in air and then connected by solder. Make sure they're sitting, resting down. It's a little bit hard. You can get some kind of tape or something to hold the ESC down, or one of those helping hands, you know, like the alligator clips. But yeah, I don't really find that it's worth it. It just takes a tiny bit longer. There we go. So that one is all done. You can kind of just straighten it back out, and it doesn't look too ugly, but it's getting up more heat shrink. Alright, there we go. There is our clockwise rotating motor done. So now let's do another one. Once again, exactly the same as we just did this one. Okay, so there you have your four motors. These two are the straight wired ones, which should spin clockwise, and these two are the crossed wire ones, which should spin counterclockwise. And I'm not 100% sure on the directions there, because I swear every time I do it and every time I look it up, I do it backwards or it changes. I'm not sure if it differs per ESC, but that's just how I'm going to go with this. And at last resort, we can just snip the heat shrink and switch any two of the wires back if it's wrong, but it should be right like this. So the clockwise ones, are going to be going here for the front left and back right, and the counterclockwise will go in the back left and front right, because you want to think of it as the propellers are turning in. They're turning in towards the back, and they're turning in towards the front, so that can help you get your motor directions there. So now we need to mount these with screws here, and these Emax motors do come with their own motor screws. And make sure you get the long ones. There comes a short and long ones, and I use the long ones because this is a 4mm bottom plate here, so it needs more length to get through to reach the motor threads. However, if you're using a 3mm plate, you're going to need to use the short screws. So I only use 2 screws per motor here, but you can use 4 if you want. It's just basically a matter of time for me. So I'm just going to put some Loctite on here. I'm going to take one of our motors here. Should spin clockwise, the straight wired one. And I'm just going to put it in up here. Right here. Once you get the first one, they should be easier. And these ones have set screws so that no C-clips protrude up, so you don't have to worry about the holes being too small. However, they are big enough for C-clips in this frame. But then just give your screws a good tighten down. Nothing too tight, especially if you're using Loctite, but you know, don't strip it, but definitely give them a good torque. That should be good there, and then you can hopefully, I don't think you'll be able to see it, but you can check through the motor. You can see through the gap there, and I can tell that the screws are not touching the windings. You can see they just barely come up into the bell here, so that's good. So now let's do the other 4 here. Alright, there we go. Our 4 motors are now screwed in securely. So looks like the ESCs, they're kind of just wiggling around in here, and I will zip tie these to the frame. However, since I kind of want to bend these out of the way like that to get it free for our PDB in here, to get all these wires out of the way, I'm going to leave them loose for right now, because you can see if you just do that quick, it makes you free for your PDB here. So this is the PDB that's included, the Maytech V3.1, and the battery leads come out the back here. So this is the front, you can tell by the camera slots. Alright, so next to mount the PDB, you're going to need these 4 little washers, the spacers here, and the 4 standoffs. And then the screws, I couldn't find any that really fit this, just the regular 6mm M3x6 here. They go through the frame, then the washer, then the PDB to get to the standoff here, so there's no threads. I tried some, what are these? I believe these are M3x10, but these were too long, so I dug out around and found some old motor screws that are M3x8. And I hate these huge flat bottoms here, but they're going to have to work for this. So basically you just put them in these holes here, these square holes, the 30.5mm holes. Put a screw up through, and then just grab one of these little washers here so the board doesn't short. Make sure the battery cable is coming out the back, the marked bat here, and take one of these little standoffs and just screw it on. There's not many threads. I don't like that. I wish I had some M3x9 or something, but 3x10 is too long, so just put all 4 of these in. Alright, there we go. I got those in, and hopefully you can see I only put 3 of them in because I'm going to leave that out because for right now it's easier for when you're soldering up your ESCs and your battery and stuff, your battery lead, that it's really easy to melt these with your iron if you're not careful. So I just left this one out because I'll be doing this ESC first. So let's just pull in some here. Hopefully you can see over here these pads, they have rail, they're not one on each side, they're negative, positive, positive, negative, negative, positive, and then positive, negative, negative, positive, positive, negative. They're all marked on here on the edges here. So this positive, let me just turn this around so it's a little easier to see. Try and get this wire out of the way. So this positive here is only going to need to come right to here with the ESC there. So I'm going to give it a tiny bit of slack, and I'll cut that guy right there. And the negative, I'll probably, I'll run around to here. And once again, just make it just a little bit longer to give some slack, because you can always cut it shorter, but you can't cut it longer. And then I'm just going to strip these. I strip these a little bit short, not too much material exposed, just because it's easier to get a short if you have more exposed there. So that's good. And once again, twist them if you see any stray wires. And I'm going to tin these guys up. Right there, lots of heat. Make sure you're using high heat and a large tip to distribute the heat well and evenly. Don't want that hanging off there. Hopefully you can see that. And now I'm going to actually, well, I guess I'll do one at a time. I'll tin the pads, so let's just tin these here in a second. Alright, so to get this one all done, we're going to grab this guy here. Sorry, but this one's already done because they did it, and notice the camera died. Alright, now the standoff's out of the way so I don't melt it. Let's tin these pads on here. Make sure you get them nice and hot. Might take a little longer to heat up because PDB is pretty thick, as well as they're all connected in a rail. Already got these wires tinned. So now let's put these down. You can use tweezers or pliers, but I find my fingers work just fine here. Make sure you get nice, lots of solder on this. Nice, good joint there. That one's not quite. It's far down as I would like. There we go. It slid down very well. This is going to come around here. There we go. Now it looks pretty good. And the ESC will just be zip tied here, and there's plenty of room for it to come around the standoff wherever it went right here. So just make sure you leave enough room for your wiring there. So let's do the other two quick. So the PDB is now fully mounted with the 4 standoffs here, and none of the screws they included, at least the ones that I could find, were the right length to fit all the way through the carbon, then the spacer, and get enough into the standoff through the board there. So I had to go on quite the hunt to find the correct length of screws. It's kind of disappointing. I thought they're in there. So now that that's all done, should be able to zip tie the ESCs down here. Alright, and now I put all the little knots towards the middle here, and then I just go around and clip these guys all off with these nice little clippers so it doesn't leave. We'll get some of them apart there, so it doesn't leave any sharp jagged spots if you get it real close right at the base. It's nice and flush, not sharp if you cut it farther out. So that's good there. So now we're wrapping up pretty much for part 1 here. So I'm going to install the battery lead. So they give you an XT60, and they give you 16 gauge wire. However, I feel like that's way too thin for a build, something that's going to be pulling high power like this. So I like to use 12 gauge, quite a bit thicker. This is definitely, you don't definitely need any thicker than this. This is as thick as I would go. So the battery, it comes out the back on this PDB, and I usually like to have it come from like here and then go up right here to along the standoff, because there's a hole for a standoff right here. So I like to have it kind of like zip tie up to that, and the battery on top will plug in there. So let me see how tall the standoffs are. Okay, so this standoff is going to go right here. So I'm actually going to strip these wires and solder these. Let's see. It's just, I don't know, because I want to. It's hard to do the connector if you don't have the wires free. So as you can see just how thick these wires are. Very, very thick. So I'm going to tin these, and we'll do the connector here. So it's going to require quite a bit of heat, so I'm going to turn up my iron hotter. Okay, iron's up to heat. I have it turned way up for this, 410 Celsius. because we're going to need to be moving a lot of heat. And these take a lot of solder and a lot of heat and a lot of time to get right. So I'm just going to let this sit on until it can really flow through the whole wire. It's slowly starting to seep down into the layers. Add a little bit more in the middle and bottom. There we go. And I wouldn't really touch that. That's going to be really hot there. So now let's do the negative. You can see it's still friggin' it's still liquid. This piece just came off. It's so hot. So you gotta be careful here, especially not to burn yourself because it's just so hot. And then you can try and twist it to get it around. You want to have this nice and tinned throughout the entire connector here, so you don't have a bad connection to your battery. Would not be good. Okay, it's good enough there. Now I'm just going to put some solder in the pads, or the cups here for the XT60. Try and get this guy cleaned up. Get it to flow all around in there, lots of heat. There we go. So now let's take the positive and try and get it down in there. Add some more fresh solder on the back. It looks like I missed. It's hard to get it to flow all the way through. Alright. And if you can, push it into the cup. With this 12 gauge it might be a little bit harder because, oh man, that's still molten there. Because it's basically the diameter's filling the entire cup. You can't push into it, but I don't want any strands to, when I'm pushing, to like fray out to the outsides of the connector like that. You can see that got in there very well. There's no strays. It's not focused. Focus down here. So yep, that looks pretty good. Now we can do the negative. Usually a bit harder to do the second wire. There we go. That one looks pretty good as well on there. No strays. So now I'm going to get some heat shrink and shrink this down. Alright, they give you this in the kit here. This is just some black. I'll be using it for both wires. I don't care. I don't care about red on the red wire. Pull in a little bit. This stuff fits perfect down along here. Shrink it. There we go. Pretty nice looking XT60 lead. Once again, make sure the positive on the side of the connector here, as you can see right there, is the red wire. So now, back to our quad here. So the standoff, where did that get to? Right here. It's going to be about this tall. So for the wires, probably come around the back. Oops, knocked it over. Probably do about something like that. So make it just a little bit longer, just in case, and straighten it up. And yeah, let's cut it right there. See how that goes. Let's strip this end here. This lead's tinned up, so now I'm going to do the pads on the PDB here. And if you accidentally bridge the pads next to it, it's alright. They're connected anyways. You see I just bridged the negative there. If we pull in a little bit farther, Yeah, it's having trouble focusing now. Hopefully you can see the negatives bridged, but the negative and negative correspond on the side. They at least thought of that, so they're next to the pad that they're going to connect to anyway, so it's perfectly fine. So now let's take the negative. Alright, there we go. We got both of them zip tied in, and then this should just come up either on this side or this side of the standoff and zip tie there. This 12 gauge is not that flexible since it's so thick, but yeah, I think that's gonna be it for part 1 of the build video here. Since we have the PDB wired up with the ESCs and the motors, pretty much the bulk of the hard wiring done, or not the hard, the easy wiring. Next stuff, we're just going to be still adding a couple power for the video transmitter on here, power for the camera, and 5 volts for the flight controller. But yeah, this looks pretty good. This is where I stopped in the part 1, so part 2 we'll be finishing up the full build, and then part 3 we'll be going into the computer software and setting up the ESCs and the flight controller right here. And then after that we'll be doing some flying and some tuning of this, so stay tuned for that. I'll leave the link down below to check out my Patreon if you're interested in helping support the channel and you like what I do. Please subscribe if you aren't already, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.